Have you ever wondered why certain moments in your life feel heavier, almost as if time itself is leaning forward? What if the uneasiness you've been sensing lately isn't stress, but a signal, a sign that something ancient, something spoken long before you were born, is beginning to unfold right now? Because Jesus didn't leave the last days shrouded in confusion. He spoke plainly. He told his followers to watch for specific signs, markers, that would rise like warning beacons for those willing to see them. But here's the part most people overlook. Some of those signs weren't meant for centuries in the future. Some, he said, would begin happening before a season ends, before a year concludes, before time turns its page once again. So the question becomes painfully personal. What if you are living in the very window Jesus described? What if what he said must happen before this year is over is already taking shape? And if so, what does that mean for you, right now, before it's too late to understand? To understand what Jesus said must happen before a year ends, we need to revisit a moment his disciples never forgot. It happened on the Mount of Olives, a place where heaven feels closer. Where the wind carries whispers from eternity, the disciples had just heard Jesus speak about the temple's destruction. To them, it was unthinkable, impossible. Yet Jesus spoke it as a certainty, and within a generation, it happened exactly as he said. Shaken, the disciples came to him privately. "Tell us," they asked, "when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" In Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. Jesus answers with a prophecy layered like a mountain range, some peaks near, some far in the distance. Wars, rumors of wars, nations rising against nations, earthquakes in various places, lawlessness increasing, hearts growing cold. But then Jesus said something striking, something surprisingly specific, something tied to time itself. He said, "Learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branch becomes tender and puts forth leaves, you know summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door." Then he added a sentence scholars have debated for generations. This generation will not pass away until all these things take place. A countdown, a season, a window in time. Jesus said there would come a period when signs would accelerate, when events would compress, not random, not scattered, but compounded, happening within the same turning of a season, the same cycle, the same year. For centuries, believers wondered when that window finally opens. How would we know? To grasp what Jesus meant, we need to follow his imagery. The fig tree wasn't an accident. To the Jewish mind, the fig tree symbolized Israel, its rebirth, its awakening, its return after long barrenness, a tree budding, a nation returning, a prophecy awakening. Jesus was pointing to a moment when Israel would stand again, and when global events would converge in rapid succession, not decades apart, but within the span of a single blossoming season. And then comes the overlooked phrase, small, simple, yet explosive. When you see these things begin to happen, the key is the word begin. Jesus wasn't describing the conclusion of history. He was describing the trigger, the moment when events initiate a chain reaction that moves faster than any previous generation experienced. Like dominoes falling, like birth pains intensifying, like storm clouds rolling in faster than anyone expects. Jesus taught that once this acceleration begins, it wouldn't stretch endlessly. A season would start, and before that season closes, before the next chapter of time is written, certain things must happen. Things that signal to God's people, stay awake, stay alert. You're living in the window the prophets spoke of. So, what are these things? And why do so many believers feel their hearts stirring right now, as if something unseen is approaching? Imagine a rescue team preparing for a dangerous mission. They study weather patterns. They watch the skies. They monitor shifting winds. When the first signs of a coming storm appear, they don't panic, but they also don't delay. They know the window to act is small. The moment the clouds form, the countdown begins. Jesus used this same imagery for his people. He wasn't trying to frighten them. He was inviting them to live with awareness, like someone hearing distant thunder and knowing a storm is moving quickly. Or picture a marathon. Runner approaching the final mile, the entire race changes. Breathing shifts. Focus sharpens. Every step becomes intentional. This is how Jesus described the final generation. A people who recognize they're no longer in training laps. But in the finishing stretch dot, or think of a family preparing for adoption, paperwork, conversations, waiting rooms, and then suddenly, a phone call. It's time. Everything accelerates. Decisions must be made quickly. The moment they've anticipated is no longer distant. It's here. Jesus said the end-time signs would work the same way. Long seasons of waiting, followed by sudden acceleration. Why does this matter today? Because many believers are sensing that this global acceleration, this prophetic quickening, is happening now. Inside our very year, not someday, not eventually, but within the moments we're living in. And if that's true, then the question becomes, what did Jesus say must happen before the year ends, before the window closes? Jesus warned of rising deception, not just lies, but alluring narratives that pull hearts away from truth. He spoke of increasing pressure, systems of the world growing heavier, offering empty promises while demanding deeper allegiance. He described a world where fear spreads, like fire through dry grass, where nations tremble, where love grows thin. But he also spoke of protection, a seal placed upon God's people, a mark not seen by human eyes, yet unmistakable in the spiritual realm. He contrasted it with the systems of the world, systems rising like waves, pushing people toward compromise, conformity, and spiritual numbness. Jesus taught that in the final season, a dividing line would appear, not a line of politics or culture, but of allegiance, the seal of God, or the pull of the world. He said pressures would increase, but so would clarity. The world would shake, but his people would stand. Trouble would rise, but so would a remnant marked by courage, purity, and unshakable faith. But then Jesus added something that creates the very tension of this documentary. He said the gospel would be proclaimed to all nations, and then the end would come, a global witness, a worldwide message, a final wave of awakening before time shifts into its next chapter. And here's the subtle detail. Jesus implied this global witness would rise in the same season as the shaking within the same window. Before the year's spiritual cycle concludes, light and darkness rising together, crisis and redemption unfolding side by side, a world in turmoil, and a people being prepared. But prepared for what? So what did Jesus say must happen before a prophetic year draws to a close? The answer is found in Matthew 24:33-35. Mark 13:29-31, and Luke 21:28. When you see these things begin to happen, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near, before the season ends. Before the year turns, before the prophetic window closes, Jesus said his people must do one thing: lift up their heads, recognize the signs, awaken to their identity, and prepare their hearts for redemption. This is the moment of realization. The moment when God's people stop living distracted, stop living asleep, stop living weighed down by the noise of the world, and instead look upward with clarity, hope, and anticipation. Before the year ends, Jesus says his people must shift from fear to focus, from anxiety to awareness, from survival to spiritual readiness. This is the divine requirement, the prophetic activation, the command spoken softly yet urgently. When these things begin, look up, because the act of looking up is more than posture. It is allegiance. It is awakening. It is the heart's declaration. I know who I belong to. I know where my help comes from. I know this world is not the end of my story. And then Jesus paints a vision so cinematic, so breathtaking, that it anchors the entire prophecy. He speaks of the Son of Man coming in clouds with power and great glory. He speaks of angels gathering the faithful from the ends of the earth. He speaks of Mount Zion, a place of victory. He speaks of the Lamb standing triumphant. He speaks of redemption, not theory, but reality. Before the year closes, Jesus requires a shift in posture, a turning of the eyes, the heart, the spirit, because the one who promised redemption is closer than we ever imagined. So what does all this mean for you? It means you are not alive in this generation by accident. Your breath today is not random. Your journey is not meaningless. You were placed here now on purpose, in a world overflowing with distractions. Jesus invites you to lift your gaze, to see beyond the headlines, to hear beyond the noise, to recognize that your life is part of a story unfolding across heaven and earth. He's asking, are you awake? Are you watching? Are you living with purpose? Are you anchored in something eternal? Are you ready for the shift, the acceleration, the awakening that has already begun? This is not about fear. It's about identity. It's about belonging. It's about stepping into the role God wrote for you long before your first heartbeat. Maybe you've felt lost lately. Maybe the world's chaos has weighed you down. Maybe you've wondered if God still sees you. He does. And the fact that you're hearing this right now means He's calling you back to clarity, calling you back to courage, calling you back to the upward gaze Jesus commanded. Lift your head, lift your hope, lift your heart, because what Jesus said must happen before this year is over, is happening inside you. As this year moves toward its close, remember this: God is not surprised by anything happening in the world. He is not anxious. He is not uncertain. He is not overwhelmed. He is writing a story, steady, sovereign, unstoppable, and you are part of it. So walk into the coming days with courage. Hold your head high. Let your heart be steady. Stay anchored in the words of Jesus, who told you these things not to frighten you, but to prepare you, to strengthen you, to remind you that redemption is near. If this message spoke to your spirit, if it awakens something inside you, I invite you to subscribe for more biblical wisdom, more prophetic insight, and more journeys into the mysteries of Scripture. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are part of a story heaven is still unfolding. And as Jesus said, when you see these things begin to happen, lift up your head. Your redemption is drawing near.